When Linda discovered her wedding ring was missing from its box that morning, she didn't scream. She didn't cry. She didn't call the police. She simply closed the lid, poured herself a cup of coffee, and sat at the kitchen table, staring out the window at their quiet suburban street, slowly waking up. But something inside her had broken. Not because the ring was expensive, though it was platinum with a diamond, a gift from Mark on their 10th anniversary. But because it was the last reminder of who he used to be. Before all of this, she knew who'd taken it. Not a thief. Not some kid off the street. Not an accident. Her own husband. Mark hadn't just taken the ring. He'd sold it. Last night, when he said he was checking the generator at his brother's, he'd actually walked into the pawn shop on Main Street and walked out with $4,200 in cash. Linda knew because she'd been watching him. For the past 6 months, she'd lived in silence, watching her husband turn into a stranger. He'd grown irritable, distant, started disappearing at night under excuses that didn't hold up. At first, she thought it was work stress. Then, maybe an affair. But when she found the pawnshop receipt in the pocket of his jacket, the one he forgot to hang up, everything clicked. He wasn't cheating. He was lying. And worse, he was stealing. Not just the ring. A month earlier, her gold watch had vanished. Then her grandmother's earrings. And just last week, the $10,000 savings certificate they'd been stashing away for a kitchen renovation. Everything was disappearing, and Mark kept coming home with empty eyes and the smell of cigarette smoke, though he'd quit smoking back in college. Linda didn't argue. Didn't make a scene. She just remembered. Because revenge isn't a scream. Revenge is silence waiting for its moment. And today was that day. Breakfast passed in familiar quiet. Mark ate toast, scrolling through news on his phone. Linda stirred her coffee, pretending not to notice how his fingers tapped nervously against the table. "You heading to work today?" she asked casually. "Yeah, same as always," he muttered, not looking up. "And tonight? Client meeting. Might be late." She nodded. It all fit. Last night, he'd also had a client meeting and came home at 2 a.m. with an empty wallet and the sharp tang of cheap whiskey on his breath. Linda knew exactly where he really went. She'd been following him for a week. Every Tuesday and Thursday, he drove to the old business center on the edge of town. There, on the 3rd floor, in an office with a faded sign that read Global Investments, he'd spend 2 or 3 hours locked inside. At first, she thought it was a secret rendezvous. But then, when she waited outside and saw him hand an envelope to a man in a gray suit, it all became clear. Mark was gambling. Not cards. Not casinos. He was tangled up in some kind of financial pyramid scheme. Or worse, money laundering. Linda wasn't a lawyer, but she'd worked as an accountant for 20 years. She recognized the look of a man drowning in debts he couldn't explain. He'd sold her ring to pay a security deposit. She didn't say a word to him. Instead, she started moving. First, Linda went to the bank. She pulled copies of all their joint accounts, loan statements, deeds to the house and car. Then she visited a notary, where she signed a power of attorney for her personal assets and opened a new account under her maiden name, the one she hadn't used since 1998. Next, she called her old friend Tom, who worked in financial crimes. They hadn't spoken in 10 years, but he'd always been honest. "Tom, I need your help," she said when he answered. Not as a friend. As a confidential source. She told him everything: the pawnshop, the office on Main Street, the missing jewelry, the strange transfers from their shared account to unknown numbers. "You sure about this?" he asked. 100%. "Then do exactly this." He gave her instructions. And Linda followed them to the letter. The next day, she accidentally left her laptop open on the kitchen counter while Mark was home. On the screen, a fake email from an investor promising to return all his money if he wired another $15,000. Mark, of course, read it. And of course, he took the bait. 2 days later, he withdrew the last of their savings, the money they'd been setting aside for a vacation in New Mexico. Linda watched him drive away, envelope of cash in hand. She didn't stop him. Let him go. Let him take that final step. That evening, everything collapsed. Mark came home at 7, pale, shaking. "Where's the money?" Linda asked, stirring soup at the stove. It's gone," he whispered. "Who took it?" "That guy, from the office. He vanished. The whole building's empty." She turned off the burner and faced him. "You mean Global Investments at 217 Main Street?" He nodded. "It was a setup, Mark." "What?" "I tipped off the authorities. They raided the place this morning. You walked right into the trap you built yourself." He stared at her like she was a ghost. You knew all along?" "I knew you were lying. Stealing. Willing to sacrifice everything, our home, our life, me, for this stupid game. I was going to get it all back, 10 times over. You were trying to save your pride." He sank into a chair. "What happens now?" "2 people are coming. One from the IRS. One from financial crimes. They'll have questions." "You turned me in?" "No, Mark. I just stopped covering for you." He buried his face in his hands. "I'm going to lose everything." "You already did." A knock came at the door. Linda went to answer it. 3 weeks later, Mark was gone. Not in jail, not yet. But the investigation was in full swing. His name had already appeared in local news as a person of interest in a fraud scheme. He'd lost his job. Friends had cut him off. Linda filed for divorce. She didn't feel anger. Didn't feel joy. Just freedom. One morning, she woke up, made coffee, and walked into the backyard. Under the old maple tree, she buried a wedding ring, not the real one, but cheap costume jewelry she'd bought at the mall. Let it lie there. A symbol of what she'd laid to rest. A month later, she started a new job at a nonprofit helping women in crisis. She liked feeling like she could actually make a difference. And she began to write. Not novels. Not memoirs. Just short stories. About silence. Betrayal. About how sometimes the most devastating revenge is simply letting someone fall on their own. One of her pieces was published in the local paper. The headline read, "When you stop saving someone, you start living." Linda smiled. And went to pour herself a second cup of coffee.